Beneath Silicon Valley's mind-blowing innovations in technology lie several untold stories of extensive criminal activities that would shock just about anyone. When the smartest minds on the planet plan a heist, they usually do it to perfection. The latest heist to be exposed involves now defunct famous solar system giants, DC Solar, and its owner, Jeff and Paulette Karpov. The couple faces 30 years of imprisonment on 2-count charges of wire fraud and money laundering.
A Northern California couple pleading guilty to a massive Ponzi scheme. Prosecutors say Jeff and Paulette Karpov defrauded investors out of $1 billion.
This comes after nearly a decade of serving millions of customers with groundbreaking solar products, as well as attracting investment from the likes of Warren Buffett. Well, the tables have turned for the billionaire couple because of all the many things that happen there. One thing is sure in Silicon Valley. You can defraud recklessly and mess around as you wish, but you'll get caught red-handed on your day of reckoning. Stick around as we unravel the story behind the craziest criminal fraud case in the history of California and the life of its protagonist thereof. Jeff Karpov grew up in the small city of Martinez on Northern California's industrial Carquinez Strait. His childhood home, about a mile from the city's Shell oil refinery, overlooked a biker bar, which Karpov described as a hangout for marauding Hell's Angels. Jeff had a meth addiction, which made things worse, and soon he was selling the drug to pay debts to dealers. However, his luck turned after he married Paulette Amato, his high school sweetheart who helped him get clean. In 2002, using a little garage on a Martinez backstreet, the couple opened an independent repair shop called Roverland USA. Customers came from across the Bay Area for the artful shortcuts Jeff took to fix Land Rovers on the cheap. But the business imploded after a failed expansion into retail due to a bad deal involving vehicle parts that Karpov had ordered in bulk from Mexico. Well, Jeff was no doubt a good mechanic, but as a businessman, he wasn't that impressive. By 2007, Roverland was dead, the Karpovs' mortgage was in default, and creditors were suing. Things began to go south for the 36-year-old with a wife and 2 young kids. After he lost his repair shop, Jeff filed for personal bankruptcy and watched a lender foreclose on the small house he was living with his family in. With no money and bankrupt, Jeff was at his life's lowest until the remarkable happened. A former Roverland customer called him with a job offer to sell solar panels. Well, Jeff liked the idea and began talking about the gig with a neighbor who wanted panels for his weekend house, but was worried they'd get stolen when he wasn't there. Thoughtful, Karpov started to wonder if panels have to be on the roof, where thieves could snatch them. He thought that if the panels were bolted to a trailer, it would be easier to roll them into a barn or garage when the owners were away, or hitch them to trucks that could be taken with the owners. The title of his first patent application just about summed it up: trailer with solar panels. However, not even Karpov was sure it made any sense. The contraption he had rigged up in his driveway was a car trailer decked with solar panels and a heavy battery. He called it the Solar Eclipse, and it was a wonder no one seemed to have thought of before. The brilliant invention had 10 solar panels arranged in 2 rows and attached to a rotating beam. This clever design could help you lock them upright for aerodynamic transport on highways, then tilt them sunward when you've parked. It was an all-purpose generator towable anywhere for green power on the go. For decades, there was basically one way to rush power to places without electricity: the portable diesel generator. But diesel generators ate the ozone layer, warmed the planet, and caused smog, acid rain, and possibly cancer, coupled with their noise, smell, and the cost of refueling. Karpov's solar generator on wheels was a sun-fueled alternative to these diesel generators that proved hazardous, and in no time it began to get the attention of people with real money. One of such men was Dave Watson, a software consultant and off-road enthusiast who used to service his vehicles at Karpov's Roverland shop. The man had stayed in touch with Jeff, and upon hearing Jeff's idea about solar panels on wheels, took interest. Mr. Watson gathered a group of local entrepreneurs in a parking lot to have a look at Karpov's odd-looking trailer. Well, as businessmen, they saw potential in this new project and began to work closely with Jeff. Karpov could barely have imagined it. He'd never gone to college and had no experience in green technology. His invention, he thought, was crazy, harebrained. But investors saw the makings of a clean energy revolution. Banking on the growing interest, in late 2008, Karpov received $368,000 from Watson's associates, who formed a distribution company to market his invention. Hollywood was the chief target, as his Solar Eclipse generator was a replacement for the diesel engines that powered on-location trailers for actors and makeup artists. Production and marketing strategies continued until 2011. While watching a local baseball game in California, he received a text that he had made his first major sale. The paint company Sherwin-Williams had bought 192 prototypes of his generators for nearly $29 million. Year after year, from 2011 to 2018, blue blue-chip corporations like US Bank, Progressive Insurance, and Geico bought thousands of Karpoff's generators. In fact, DC Solar became so big that the Obama administration made them a partner in a national program to enlist tech in the fight against climate change, alongside other big-name tech giants like Amazon, Alphabet, and AT&T. DC Solar made huge sales that topped over $2.5 billion, but the CEO chose to spend his investments on private jets, purchasing a baseball team, a dozen houses, and a collection of muscle cars looked after by a guy named Bubba. In fact, Jeff was swimming in so much money that he once hired the rap star Pitbull to perform at his company's in-house Christmas party in 2019. Between 2011 and 2018, DC Solar funded its expansion by selling generators to investors through its subsidiary branch DC Solar Solutions, with the idea that another subsidiary, DC Solar Distribution, would lease them back, paying investors a generous rate of return. They decided to provide significant incentive for investors by offering generous federal tax credits. The idea was that investors would buy the generators without taking possession of them, pay a percentage of the sales price, and finance the balance with DC Solar. This seemed lucrative enough for investors like Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, which plowed $340 million into the mobile solar generators built by DC Solar in return for alternative energy tax credits and tax deductions on the device's depreciation. Other companies like insurance giant Progressive, independent bank East West Bancorp, and paint maker Sherwin-Williams also invested. After making the purchase, investors would lease these generators back to DC Solar, which in turn rented it out to third parties. A portion of the lease revenue would be channeled to the investors, and the remainder of it used to pay the investors' debts to DC Solar. However, the third-party leases generated little income, and the company had to pay early investors with the funds contributed by later investors, making DC Solar more like a Ponzi scheme. They sold non-existent solar generators to investors, created false financial statements, and obtained false lease contracts, among other efforts to conceal the fraud. They pulled off this trick by reselling the same equipment again and again to new buyers, scraping off old VIN stickers and replacing them with new ones. Paulette Karpoff controlled the Ponzi-like payments that hid the company's lack of third-party lease revenue, created fake engineering reports for the generators that the company sold but never built, and helped fool investors into thinking that DC Solar was a success. Eventually, the company simply stopped building the mobile solar generators that it claimed to sell to investors. Out of the 17,000 generators DC Solar claimed to have sold, only 6,000 ever existed. Well, the Silicon Valley couple actually enjoyed the Ponzi life while it lasted. Jeff and Paulette Karpoff siphoned at least $140 million in investor money, splurging it on dozens of properties, including a Las Vegas mansion and a pair of condos on Lake Tahoe, more than 150 cars, including a $1 million Mustang, classic Fords, as well as Plymouths and Bentleys. Added to that, they owned more than 20 properties and even a professional baseball team in Martinez, just northeast of San Francisco. A few days after the flamboyant Christmas party that hosted Miami rapper Pitbull in late December 2019, FBI agents turned up and conducted a massive raid of the place. The FBI agents took many of the luxury cars and seized a pile of cash, $1.8 million in all, that had been secretly tucked away in one of the couple's offices. However, almost all of the vehicles, including a 1978 Pontiac Trans Am owned by actor Burt Reynolds, were put up for auction in October 2020, raising more than $8 million. Their company, DC Solar, is now out of business and most of its workforce unemployed. Their home in Martinez, a sprawling 4,100 square foot affair, is currently in foreclosure and the swimming pool littered with leaves. In January 2020, the couple pleaded guilty to defrauding investors and laundering money. COVID-19, however, delayed their formal sentencing, but on November 9, 2021, Jeff Karpoff was sentenced to 30 years in prison in order to pay $790.6 million in restitution, while his wife Paulette bagged a 15 years jail term. Following the investigation, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway took a $377 million charge tied to DC Solar to reverse the value of tax credits it had claimed against assets that turned out not to have been real. The billionaire couple's solar heist may have been uncovered, but we can guarantee that there are still lots of criminal schemes going on in Silicon Valley. Well, time reveals all.